Welcome to the interview. I'm Ciara Pressler. This is Pregame. This is where we interview my favorite game changers, innovators, and creators. And today we are welcoming back one of my very favorite business besties, business friends, strategic connections. For over 10 years, a dear friend and an amazing business person, Michael Roderick.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to get a chance to be here and talk all things, given the crazy environment we're in these days.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's quite a week when we're taping this. Of course, I realize we hit the 6-month mark with stay home here in Oregon. You're in Manhattan, so you felt it a lot earlier than we did.
Yeah. Yeah, we've definitely been hunkered down in a pretty consistent manner, and it's just now starting to get to the point where you're going out of the house more than twice, where you're like, okay, that's okay. I can go to the store just like for something right now, as opposed to being like, I'm going to save up my time and I'm going to go to the store and get everything I can get, and then I'm going to get back, kind of thing. So it's been a nice little change, and we live near the park, so a lot of the time it's just going for a walk or taking the littles to the playground, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a new normal. I didn't fully understand how oppressive it was and having to stay in your place until the last couple of weeks here in Oregon, because we are under this thick cloud of smoke with hazardous air quality and having to keep all the windows shut. And I have you can see my fireplace is taped off behind me so that no smoke gets in, because I was getting headaches. And it's like, oh, this is a whole other level of staying home.
Yeah.
It'll pass soon though, but it's gotta be crazy. Yeah, I'm curious, I still listen to WNYC every morning, the NPR affiliate there, and so I know a lot about what's going on in New York usually, and I'm particularly interested in the effect on businesses. What have you observed in terms of like small businesses around the city, the landscape? What's going on from your
I mean, it's entire industries are really, really hurting. As you know, I come from Broadway, right? So like I have that Broadway background, and Broadway is built on a business model that can't survive during COVID, because you have to have physical people close together sitting inside of a theater to actually make Broadway work. And Broadway shows only make money if you sell out, if you like have people sort of wall to wall. So none of that is really an option right now. So that industry is kind of almost on, I would say like just on hold for the most part until they kind of figure out what they're going to do. Real estate is kind of a wild scenario here too, because there are a lot of places that their business depends on people being indoors and doing things, and they haven't been able to pay their rent for months and months and months. So in essence, a lot of businesses are gone. A lot of restaurants are gone. A lot of places that, you would sort of always go to, the coffee shop around the corner, like things like that, are really, really being hit hard by this. And it's the city is normally a very bustling kind of place. Like that's how you kind of know New York. And there are lots of instances where you'll be out and it's much quieter, and a lot more places are shuttered than usual. So that's a lot of what I've been seeing, specifically from sort of that small business kind of side of things.
I read a stat that 1 in 6 restaurants won't reopen. Yeah. This whole debate right now with the mayor and indoor dining, it seems almost like a moot point to me, because restaurants' business model is based on, like you said, like selling out. Like they have to be turning those tables, and so a restaurant operating at 25% capacity is going to be losing money in most cases, isn't it? So why open at all?
Exactly. It's the thing that always I don't want to say always, but the thing that happens very, very often when there is a crisis or an issue is that a lot of the time people try to adjust the existing business model, and that won't work because the existing business model lived with the existing situation. Like, it does not live in another situation for the most part. So even if you make adjustments, it's just not going to work. And we're seeing that even in education, right? Where basically, if you look at going back to school and being like, hey, we're going to do all these, precautionary measures. No, you've got to reimagine how you're going to educate these kids at this point, right? Because the way that you did it, the way that it was structured is not going to work right now. And I think like that's a lot of what's happening is, rather than saying, let's actually look at a new structure for these businesses, it's saying, well, let's just adjust these like couple of things, and it's just not gonna work right now.
Are you seeing any interesting reimaginings for any type of business in all of this? Have you noticed anyone doing it right?
I mean, I think that, there's a lot of scrambling that, is happening, but the work that I've actually seen a lot of people in the theater world do, just in creating like Zoom readings, right? And starting to look at how do we replicate those experiences, gives me hope. I think that we've really only scratched the surface in terms of the experience that these technology tools can provide. I think, for the most part, people are just kind of still being like, okay, we're going to go online and we're going to do this, as opposed to looking at like, how could I recreate some of these in-person experiences and moments using these platforms? And I think that's where the real opportunity is looking at what are the ways that you can sort of recreate an experience in this sort of more virtual environment, or what are the ways that you can recreate the business model, start to look at like, what are the other opportunities that are out there. I think that for a lot of restaurants, they're trying to think through, well, what are ways that we can get people to, come out again and sort of do things again. So I know that here in Harlem, there was a special that was done, I think it was called like Sip and Serve or something, something like that, where you paid a flat fee and then you had a whole list of restaurants that basically were going to give you either a drink or an appetizer for that fee that you paid. And the idea was to get you out to the restaurant. And then, of course, you're probably not going to just have a drink and an appetizer. You're going to eat the rest of, you're going to eat the rest of the food, and you're going to have a decent meal, with your family. So I think, I think a lot of that stuff is the direction we really need to be heading into, because foot traffic just isn't really that big of an option anymore. You've got to think about how are you going to get people together. I also think that collaboration is going to be a really, really important piece of this, because you can try to sort of do it all on your own, but for the most part, if you aren't able to get other people to also spread the word about what you're doing or what you're putting out there, it's going to be really, really hard. And I think that's just across the board. I think that's across the board with a lot of the businesses that are out there right now, even individual businesses. Like, this is the time to be looking at like, what are the partnerships, like what are the opportunities that I can get my message in front of another audience and really start to get to know new people. And the other thing that's really interesting right now is that I think a lot more people are open to partnerships right now, because a lot of people are trying to figure out, well, what do I do? So it's not like, oh, well, you're coming to me and we're going to partner. Like, how are we, like, most folks are pretty open and saying, okay, yeah, like, what can we do? Because we're all kind of dealing with all sorts of challenges. In some cases, clients have disappeared. In other cases, clients are telling you they can only spend half of what they used to spend, or a quarter of what they used to spend. So I think that the partnership side of things is going to be really important right now as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Some collaborations. There's such a mindset factor here of, are you stuck in the past with how things were? And whenever I hear people say, back to normal. I just think there will be no back. Maybe some
Yeah,
things will be back, but we are in a recreation of reality right now.
exactly, exactly. And I think that a lot of the time, we have this belief that, oh, well, I was actually doing an interview the other day where we talked about this, where we have this belief that, oh, well, this is, this horrible thing, and now we have to figure out, what to do. But it's like, in entrepreneurship, there will always be a storm. That's what we talked about when I was chatting with another entrepreneur the other day. It's like, you know, if you decide that you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you decide that you're going to run your own business, there is nobody above you to protect you, right? Like when you have a boss, it's, there's somebody there who's going to take the brunt of whatever storm, comes your way. But if you're an entrepreneur, it's like you're always going to be the one to deal with whatever the thing is, right?
Yeah, there's
And
no victim, no playing victim anymore.
exactly. And right now, basically the way I see it is like there are basically like two types of people right now. There are those who are hiding and those who are showing up. And that's it. Like that's really
Wow.
it.
I
Like
love that characterization. Yeah, I'm reading The Entrepreneurial Leap by Gino Wickman right now, thanks to your introduction to him.
yes.
I love how specific he is about the traits of an entrepreneur that's going to be successful, but it is hitting me too. It's like, that's real. Like, you really need to
Yeah.
think about whether you have what it takes before you take that leap.
Exactly. I think that entrepreneurship is often romanticized, and that's one of the biggest problems of it, right? It's presented in this context because basically, I had a friend who used to say that the things that are really good for marketing are really bad for real life, and I have like 100% agree with that concept, because marketing and entrepreneurship is basically saying to people, you too can be a millionaire or a billionaire or have everything that you've ever wanted. All you need to do is take this course or buy this program or do this, or do this challenge or whatever the scenario is, right? Because in a marketing environment, that gets enough people in the door, and a handful of those people are going to convert and buy whatever that person's thing is, and it's going to kind of move from there. But what folks will not tell you and not have a conversation about, because it's not sexy, from a marketing standpoint, is the fact that if you're going to do this, you are basically signing yourself up for a life in which you're going to have to deal with lots of things, lots of challenges. And you have to have that, you basically have to have that ability to be okay with the fact that there is always going to be that storm. Like there are always going to be those challenges, like that, an industry could completely change as a result of something like COVID or, any other natural, disaster, anything that's happening, right? Your business is going to change as a result of whatever comes down the pike. And you're going to have to figure out, what are you going to do? And a lot of people are going to just hide and hope that it goes away. And the people who are going to be most successful, especially during times like these, are the ones who show up. The ones who basically say, yeah, I know everybody else is hiding, but you know what? This thing may not work, but I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to do what I can do to make this, to make this work, to move past whatever this, particular challenge is, whatever this particular issue is. And that's what entrepreneurship really is all about, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think we're in an extreme market correction for over entrepreneurship right now, because
Yep.
I always say, if I had a TED talk, it would be called "Entrepreneurs Are the New Rock Stars," and here's why it's a problem, which I'm sure you agree with, because
Yeah.
coming to New York to be an actor when I was 21, there are many people who will happily take your money to, help with your dream.
Yep.
And I spent a
Yep.
lot of money on a lot of things that were not helpful. And, I see that so much in the entrepreneurship realm. There's a million accelerators and incubators and online courses and all of that. And, I can see through them a lot because my background is marketing and sales,
Yeah.
but not always. And it's very hard to weed through the things that are going to actually be helpful. And
Yeah,
you add on that piece of like, if you're honest with people, it's not good marketing always. I mean, it is for a
exactly.
certain type of customer, but man, those
Yeah,
are problems. Is there's too many people going to do that startup thing because our new rock stars are Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon
yep,
Musk, and we don't stop to question, like, do you really want to be like those guys? Like, what's the quality of life
yeah.
here? Do you really have what it takes? Do you really have the advantages they had?
Yeah, I was reading an article the other day that said something along the lines of 82% of YouTube videos are part of the like undiscovered, like are part of like get like less than 1,000 views, right? So you have all of these people, selling the idea that you're going to be a celebrity on any one of these platforms, but the numbers are completely 100% against you in
Yeah.
regards to that. So my personal belief is don't focus on that. If you decide like you want your business to be focused on being at that top, at that top 1%, celebrity, type of status, you're probably just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, honestly, I like the people who get there, in my personal opinion, from what I have seen, the ones who I've met, who I know, who have reached that level of success, never said, that's what I want. They said, who do I want to serve? Like, what do I want to do for these people? And then they got like a crowd of people around them. And those people are the ones who talked about them and helped them get to whatever next level, made introductions for them and move the needle for them and all of this other stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like, so often there's this idea that your goal should be being famous, and there's no like talk to the famous people. Like there was this article that Tim Ferriss wrote at one point where he talked about the fact that like he got so popular that all these people were like stalking him, and he had all these different types of issues. And I like to call it the Faustian bargain of the personal brand, right? where it's like if you decide that you want like your personality to be the celebrity, then guess what? You are just like a celebrity. You are on the chopping block. You are the target, right? So like that's why I'm like a big believer in like don't be known, like don't spend all the time trying to get people to know you for you. That'll come later. Get them to know you for your ideas, because like you can share those ideas. You can get that content out there. You can be famous to people, but you don't have all that extra crap of like people wanting to know like what you ate for dinner and like where you're going and like which restaurant you're at or which island you're on or yacht or whatever ridiculous thing is sort of coming down the pike. And I've always been very, very bullish on the idea of like make something and get it out there. Don't try to like make yourself the thing. Like it's a losing battle. It's a very, very poor business model. It's and again, going back to that like top 1%, like there are only certain people who are ever going to reach that point where just because they're wild enough or crazy enough personality, somebody's going to call them an influencer and give them a boatload of money. Like don't waste your time trying to make that trying to make that ship sail. And I just don't think it works.
Well, you are the epitome of somebody who is connected. You're a celebrity to me, but
Oh,
you've introduced me to some of my best contacts, and you know so many people, and you help so many people. I don't even know what to ask first, but well, first of all, how do you manage all your contacts? Because you're so great
yeah.
at connecting people, and so you know thousands of people.
Yeah. So first off, I curate, which I think is probably one of the most important things and the thing that a lot of people forget about. And what that really means at the heart of it is if I trust you and I feel good about you and what you put out into the world, then you are part of a spreadsheet that I have of individuals where I have a bio on you. I have information on you that I can share with somebody else and say, you should meet this person. But only if we've had a conversation, we've gotten to know each other, and I've seen you be good in the world, right? Like, I don't care how famous somebody is. I don't care how much money they have. I don't care how influential they are. If they are a jerk, or if they do anything to hurt anybody else, or they've been rude or obnoxious or dismissive, not only to me, but to other people. Back when my business was first getting started, my girlfriend, then now wife, was basically helping me as like being a manager of the calendar, right? And sort of like doing like COO type, types of things. And one of my biggest litmus tests, I called the stage manager test because I did this when I was a director as well, was I would look at how they treated Nora.
Yes.
Because they could be in my face and be like, oh my God, Mike, you're just wonderful and I love you and we're buddies and all this other stuff. But if they were rude to her, or if they were obnoxious to her, or if they just were dismissive or any of those different types of things, they were not part of that circle. They were not part of that circle. So going back to the organization, it's the aspect of I have the spreadsheet of people that I'm willing to make introductions for that I think are really, really solid people. And then I've got basically the repositories of the other relationships that maybe I haven't yet, learned much from or sort of, gotten to know very well on all of the social platforms, right? So the Book of Faces, there's hundreds of people there that, thousands of people really, right, that are part of these lists where like you've met them or you're in a group with them, but you don't necessarily know them that well yet. So they're really still in that kind of acquaintance model. You're still kind of vetting. Same with the LinkedIn, right? Where it's like you're going there and you're just like, basically looking at who is putting out stuff that's kind of interesting that, you want to get to know them more. You want to get to sort of understand them more. And then they become part of that world. Once people are on that spreadsheet, then those are people that I say, okay, I'm going to look at this on a regular basis. And I ask myself, have I been in touch with them? And if I haven't, what can I do? And, I think that like most people focus on relationship acquisition, where basically they're like, I want to get to know new people. I want to meet as many people as possible. I want to connect with as many people as possible. And that's not the game. The game is relationship retention. It's where you take the time to build relationships with people over time to show that you are always there or there very, very often, as opposed to just that one person that they met once. And the more that you do that, the more that you focus on relationship retention, the more that the relationships bear like stronger fruit, and more opportunities. Because as you get to know somebody over time, you really get to understand kind of who they are and what they're looking for. And you listen for details, right? So you listen for details and people will say things and often they'll just kind of throw them away. A perfect example is you, Ciara, right? Because at your, one of your brunches, you mentioned Traction being a very important book. So when I got introduced to Gino, it was like, oh, well, this is somebody who was influenced, like impacted by his work. So why not reach out to him and see if he's open to an intro? And the thing is, like, he could have said no. Like everybody has that, opportunity to say no. And I think that's the other really important thing for anybody listening. If you reach out to people and you do the double opt-in and somebody says no, don't be upset because that's their right. They always have the right to turn down an introduction. And it's perfectly fine. And you may think that it's, really, really valuable and that they're making a mistake and all that other stuff, but never say it because you will ruin the relationship. You will absolutely 100% ruin the relationship. If somebody says, nope, that's not a fit for me, you say, thank you so much. I'll keep an eye out for other folks that would be a good fit. I have friends who they have massive podcasts, really, really successful podcasts. And they maybe take, like, they're like VCs, they take maybe one person out of like 50, or that I might send their way and say, hey, I think this person might be a good fit for your show. And every time they say no, they know that I'm going to say, thank you for letting me know. I'll keep an eye out, for other options. If there is something specific you're looking for right now, just let me know. And then I keep that eye out for, for those people. And I think, and I hear those keywords, I hear the things that they're mentioning when I'm talking to other individuals. So that's really, for the most part, how I keep it organized, how I keep it structured. And then the last thing I'll say is that if somebody pops into my head, I write a note, whether it be in my notepad, whether it be, on Evernote, whatever it is. If somebody pops in my head for whatever reason, I just jot down a note that I'm like, I need to reach out to them. I need to say hello to them. And then I've got a little list of folks who it's like, I haven't talked to them in a while. I'm just going to touch base. I'm going to, see how things are going, see what's happening. And that has been one of the biggest factors in becoming a stronger connector, has been the fact that I don't disappear, and I often say, like, there are 2 steps to blowing people's minds. Number 1 is you do what you say you're going to do. Number 2 is you do it promptly. Because tons of people never do what they say they're going to do. And tons of people say they're going to do something, and then it takes them a year to do it, or more. So you do those 2 things, you blow people's minds. They're like, oh my God, I can't even believe that you followed through on that thing that you said you were going to do, because 9 other people told me that they were going to do it and they never did it. And that's how you want to be. You want to be the person that people see and they say, oh, they do what they say they're going to do. I can trust them, because that's where, like, relationships are built on trust. If I trust you, then I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to make connections for you. If I don't trust you, I'm going to be worried about it. I'm going to be concerned. And that's the thing. You want to do everything that you can to create that consistency with people, and that consistency builds trust.
I can't believe you're saying this, because our topic at pregame this week in all of our home teams was consistency. And the thing I said was consistency creates dependability, creates trust. So I'm glad we're on the same page. So I want to ask you about LinkedIn, because that's how a lot of us are doing our professional networking. And I just, every day, it seems like I get more of these kind of cold emails that are most certainly sales emails. And maybe we'll have a few people in common, but they'll say, hey, I thought we should connect, but it's like their title in LinkedIn is like, I help business coaches expand their impact, and I'm just like, oh, gross. I hate that. And I don't have time. I just don't have time. And so what do you think of that? And what is the right way to use LinkedIn to expand your network if you don't already have these thousands of people like Michael Roderick?
Sure. So yeah, right now, basically the outreach is very, very poor for 2 reasons. The first reason is that automation is like a big thing right now. You got a bunch of people who have like given people some tech tool that makes it so that they can reach out to you and then plug in your name. And then every once in a while you get a nice, like, hey, first name. And you know exactly kind of what's going on. Right?
I didn't realize that those even existed.
How
naive of me.
No,
I thought it was special.
It's out there. It's out there, and folks are doing it, en masse, right? Like, they're trying to sort of get, as much, as much out of it as they possibly can, right? The second thing is that 9 times out of 10, people are giving you everything, so there's nothing to be curious about, right? So, like, if somebody emails to connect or whatever, it says, I'd love to talk to you about your personal brand, or I'd love to talk to you, you're like, okay, yep, sales pitch, bye, not interested, don't want to talk about this, et cetera, right? So the thing is, most people give everything away, in terms of who they are and what they do and what they're gonna help with. And as a result, there's no curiosity. So if there's no curiosity, it's very easy to just say yes or no and move on, right? So if you create curiosity, people will respond. People will be really, really interested. And then if you take the time to basically do 5 minutes of research on them and create curiosity about something that matters to them, they will get back to you. They will want to connect. They will want to have a conversation. right? So let's just say, for example, somebody decides they want to connect with me, right? And they say, hey, Mike, I just listened to your most recent podcast on this, and I was curious about this particular, this particular topic. Would you be open to, discussing it more? Or I would love to hear, more of your thoughts, whatever, something that makes me curious enough to say, yeah, I'll accept you, and let's talk more, right? The other thing is, if people I know, and I trust those people, then you already have a leg up, right? So if you take the time to say, oh, it looks like, and here's the thing, don't do it in the form way. So don't do it in the form way where it's like, oh, it looks like we're both members of blah, blah, blah. And, do you want to buy my insurance? No. Okay. Like, just basically say, like, hey, Mike, I saw that you're also in the content marketer, group with Ciara. And, I've been following both of your, both of your work, and I'm really, really curious about what you said on the pregame interview. Would you like to reach out? Would you like to talk more? And then, of course, I'm going to be like, well, you follow Ciara, so you got to be, you got to be smart, right? Like, it's, so you're probably not like too salesy, if you are salesy. So yeah, maybe I'll have a conversation, and we'll get into it, and we'll sort of talk through and kind of see where it goes. But the thing is, like, I've never read an email or a connection request that was too short.
Yeah.
Like, I've never read anything, any kind of outreach. I've never read anything that has been too short. Like, I adore when somebody gives me like 2 sentences to help me understand what needs to happen, because I'm inundated, right? And we all are. I'm not special, but when you do an interview or when you do a conversation and people are like, oh, I want to talk to you, etc., you do get a handful of people who then try to connect with you. And it's hard if they write you a book.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I'm really, really sorry. I don't have the time to read War and Peace about your skin cream. Like, I just don't.
So what I hear you saying is that you want it as brief as possible, but you want a real reference, like to show that somebody actually cares about you and hasn't automated the message. Anything else in that initial outreach that you would recommend?
Yeah, create curiosity. Get them to wonder what it would be like if they responded to you. Make them curious to talk to you. If you can make people curious to talk to you and you just like sort of plant that seed, you're going to get a much, much higher response rate. Most people, their response rate, the issue is not that they don't have enough good material, they don't have enough good content, they don't have enough good credentials. Most people's response rate issues come from the fact that they haven't created enough curiosity. They haven't made people wonder, like, wow, that was really fascinating. Like, what else could I learn, or like, this person just made me think differently. Like, how could I, like, what else can I learn from them? What else can I do?
Could you
And
give an
honestly,
example?
like,
Yeah, I would love to know, like, do you have an example of someone who's done that well?
yeah. So I'm trying to think back to like ones where I was like, wow, that was really, really useful. There was somebody who, no word of a lie, was like a tech entrepreneur with like working in business development for one of those automated services. And normally I would ignore those people, but he referenced somebody that I knew and that I respected. And then he talked about the automation sort of process. And he basically said, I'm really interested in chatting more about how can the intimacy be brought back to this world of automation. So that like got me. I was like, I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, like that's a conversation I would enjoy having.
Exactly. So I think it's that thing. It's like you plant the seed in the context of something that this person actually enjoys, right? Or something that they're actually interested in. But here's one caveat to that: don't fake it, right? So like if I tell you that I love comic books, don't reach out if you've never read a comic book in your life. Like reach out if you really also care about comic books and you want to geek out about comic books. Like, sure, we can chat, all across the board. And another, thing is, you probably know more than me if you really like comic books. So I don't have time to read, any comic books anymore. I've got a 4-year-old and a 10-month-old. Like, no, it's not, it's not going to happen. But I love the old school sort of comic book, scenarios, and I love the comic book movies, and I love talking about superheroes, right? So if somebody like really is interested in that, we would have a connection point. We would have something we were going to talk about if they were really interested in it. But if somebody reaches out and is like, hey, I like comic books too, I really like that, Sweeper Man, or whatever, like, and it's just like, no, you have no, like, just don't do that.
Yeah. I have a question here from our studio audience. Are you just open to compelling discussions in general, or does the interest come from a topic that could bolster your own work?
Oh, that's interesting. I am mostly just interested in like compelling topics. I love the idea if something can help me and support me in the work that I'm doing, like that's a great thing and it's a bonus. But if something's just interesting, I want to learn more about it. I want to be able to, to understand it, and I often look at things from the angle of like, I'm smart enough to admit when I'm ignorant, right? So like, I understand that there are things that I just don't know a ton about, and I'm more than happy to learn from people. And I'm also more than happy to learn something again. And I just wrote about this morning. I read a daily email, and, I called it POI, which was perception of ignorance, right? And most of the time when we think about, somebody starts talking and maybe we've heard it before, the thing that can sometimes happen is we like think in our heads, oh, well, I've already heard that. And then we kind of shut off, right? Because we're like, oh, well, I already know that. I already understand that. But we learn so much more by listening to something again and understanding the subtleties and starting to discover things. So if our perception of ignorance is, oh, I want to make sure that nobody ever thinks I'm ignorant and everybody thinks I know everything and, all that kind of stuff, we actually cause more problems for ourselves. But if our perception of ignorance is fantastic, I don't know a ton about this, or you know what, I've heard it once, but I think I should listen to it again and see if this person has anything else to teach me, then our POI helps our ROI on those conversations.
There's a whole TED Talk right there. Another question from our audience.
Yeah.
What tips or tricks do you have for wading through the noise and being able to focus on the compelling messages and information?
Yes. So basically, one factor is look at who is connected to the person sending you the message. Very, very often, like attracts like. So if you notice that pretty much everybody who is connected to the person that is reaching out to you is part of maybe some networking group that you were not a fan of, or seems to just be like connected to all of the other people who have just pitched you,
yeah,
you're probably not going to get a lot out of that conversation, right? Okay. But if you notice like they're connected to people that you respect and that you admire, you have a better chance of it being a good experience, a good particular, process. The other thing is, go and look at who these people are, right? So like, if somebody isn't putting out any of their own content, isn't making, anything happen, then what are what's there to discuss, right? And of course, there are going to be people, they work in organizations, so they're not going to have their own content. They're not going to have their own stuff out there. But you have to decide like what is valuable, right? So like I get, plenty of in-mails, right? But I got an in-mail from somebody who was working with the American Cancer Society, who told me she had listened to one of my podcasts on virtual networking and wanted to talk to me about how I could, have a conversation with their volunteers. Now, I don't need to go and look up like what content is she creating, because that's a topic that is very, very relevant to me, right? I lost my mother to cancer last year. So like that already, like cancer's been in my family. So that's already a connection right there. But also this is a person who took the time to listen, and they have a very, very specific ask of me. So I know exactly what I need to do. And that's the other, like, if you want to weed things out, like, do they have a specific ask? If they don't have a specific ask, you're probably going to waste your time. Like if somebody says, yeah, I'd just love to chat with you, I'd just love to pick your brain, blah, 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 like all that kind of, never going to work. Never gonna work. You're gonna go into this situation. It's gonna be taking forever because they're gonna be going on and on, about any number of things, or the entire call is gonna be a sales pitch, right?
Yeah.
The entire conversation is gonna be a sales pitch. One other thing that I refer to this as the give the mouse a cookie scenario. So if you've ever read the book Give a Mouse a Cookie, it's a children's book, and the idea is that if you give a mouse a cookie, the mouse is then going to ask you for a glass of milk. If the mouse asks you for a glass of milk, it's going to get tired now because it's got a cookie and a glass of milk. It's going to ask you to sleep in your bed. If it goes to sleep in your bed and you let it sleep in your bed, it's going to wake up, it's going to be hungry again, and it's going to ask for a cookie again, and the cycle keeps going. And basically, you got tons of people on LinkedIn looking for cookies, right? Like you got a ton of people basically coming on LinkedIn and saying like, hey, will we talk? Can we talk? Can we have a conversation? If you set up a meeting with that person, right? And you give them that cookie of where I'm going to set up that meeting, then it's just going to keep going and going and going. But if you respond back with, thanks so much for reaching out, what would you like to talk about? Half of those people will go away. Because they don't know. They just know that they're trying to pitch you, And anybody who does come back to you and says, well, I'd really love to talk to you about this, then you can evaluate that particular situation and that particular scenario.
Yeah. I have a question. So you are a very generous person in business and in life, and you blog daily, and you introduce people daily, and you are a guest on lots of programs like this one. And how do you measure ROI for all of those things you do that are free?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I look at it from the angle of, is it a funder, a feeder, or a filler, right? So if it's a funder, it's something that I did that basically directly ends up connecting to money, right? So there's a very big difference between sort of doing a podcast where you're having a conversation and maybe somebody might come, and ask you to work with you or something like that, and it's very sort of general, and going into somebody's private group where you are positioned as an expert, and in some cases even asked to give an offer to that group, right? Or present an offer to that group. So that's more of a funder situation where it's like you're donating your time at the beginning, at the front end of it, but there is already sort of a structure in the back end that's kind of, in piece. The other things are feeders, where basically like they're building your profile, they're helping other people kind of know about you, and they bring people into your world. And the feeders bring people into your world, and then those people start to kind of say like, oh, well, maybe I'm going to sign up for your mailing list, or maybe I'm going to take a look at sort of what you do. And some of those people will eventually become clients, or will eventually make, other connections to you, or sort of help you, et cetera. And then the last category is filler. And filler is when you realize that there's actually no ROI in the experience. Like you realize that this, particular free thing is actually not very relevant to the audience that you're going to be presenting for whatever the price point is of whatever you're selling. So you make the decision that maybe that's a better opportunity for somebody else, and that's the thing. It's like, I look at anything that comes my way, I look at it from the angle of if it comes my way and it absolutely 100% is aligned and I can see it in that feeder or funder kind of world, then it is a true opportunity. If it isn't, then it's a coincidence that person came my way. So I take that coincidence and I turn it into a gift. I ask myself, who else would benefit from being in front of this audience? Because I'm not necessarily going to benefit from being in front of this audience. It's not really, it's filler for me, right? Mm-hmm. But my filler could be somebody else's feeder, or could be somebody else's funder, right? And that's the thing I think we forget about. We forget about the fact that people are going to throw opportunities at you all the time. But if you think everything's an opportunity, you're going to be completely and utterly overwhelmed. But if you take the time to say, like, is this truly an opportunity for me? And if it's not, you don't just pass it off or say no. You say, thank you so much. I can't do this right now, but I know somebody else who would be amazing for it. And that is where, and that's the other thing, like you talked about staying in touch with your network. That is a brilliant way to stay in touch with the people in your circle, because in essence, you are just reaching out to them because maybe you haven't talked to them in a while, and you're like, hey, I think you'd be great on this show, or I think you'd be great for this, podcast, or I think you'd be great for this interview series, or whatever the scenario is.
I love that framing of turning it into a gift. That's wonderful. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Michael, will you do a little lightning round with me? I'll ask you a few questions and you just give me the quickest thing that comes to mind.
You got it.
All right. Favorite social platform?
Oh, I'm going to go. It's a tough one. I am going to go with the LinkedIn. Because I was going to say the Book of Faces, but I think that you get more interesting content from the LinkedIn. I feel like more people are sort of, creating like things on there, and Book of Faces feels more advertising to me these days. So yeah, so I'm gonna go with that one.
Dream intro. Who would you like to be introduced to?
Oh, that's a good one. J.J. Abrams.
Favorite Broadway show?
Ooh, probably. It's a toss-up between Last 5 Years or Jekyll and Hyde.
Ooh. What do you hope that your children learn from your work?
How to see the world through other people's eyes.
Mm-hmm. And if one thing could change in your business or in your professional life between now and a year from now, what would you like to shift?
The ability to be able to go to a coffee shop or some sort of ability to be out of my home for a block of time to do work. Right now we just don't have that option. So yeah, at some point that would be lovely. That's a type of thing you dream about.
Yeah, isn't that funny? The things that we took for granted before that now we're like, I would just like to go have a cappuccino in person.
God. I know, right? I know. I think about that all the time, where I'm just like, wow, I never imagined in my life that I would ever be like, wow, I really wish I could just go and have a coffee and work on something and not be in my house right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Michael. I always learn new things from you, and I'm motivated and inspired to be generous with thoughtfulness and quality over quantity. So where can people find you, follow you, hear the podcasts, read the daily blogs?
Sure. So my website is just smallpondenterprises.com. You go over that. There is you can sign up for the daily email. You can sign up. I have a weekly one that basically takes the best daily and sends it. And then my podcast is called Access to Anyone. It's just accesstoanyonePodcast.com. And then I'm all over the socials. But if you look for me on the Book of Faces, I am Mike Roderick as opposed to Michael. On the Book of Faces, because my Michael Roderick one got hacked. So if you decide to friend me on there, don't go to the Michael one, because you'll never get a response and you'll think I'm a hypocrite.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time, and looking forward to what you do next. Have a great weekend.
You as well. Enjoy it.
I spit it cold like lyrically I'm a problem. That's when the show starts.